The massive Vorkani scout ship moved silently through space, its dark hull reflecting the distant stars. Captain Dex stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the blue planet on the main screen. His large eyes, adapted for seeing in low light, focused on the swirling white clouds that covered much of the world's surface. "Third planet from the star," reported his science officer, Crone. "Oxygen atmosphere, water oceans, suitable for carbon-based life forms. Our sensors detect a primitive civilization." Nodded slowly. The Vorkani Empire had been exploring the galaxy for over 1,000 years, collecting interesting species. From countless worlds, some became workers, others became food, and the most appealing ones became pets for wealthy Vorkani families. This mission was specifically to find new exotic pets for the growing market back home. "What kind of life forms?" Dex asked, moving closer to the viewing screen. "Bipedal mammals," Kron replied, checking his instruments. "They call themselves humans. They appear to be in their early technological phase. They have basic machines and simple communication systems, but nothing that could threaten us." The captain smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Perfect. The pet." Market always wanted creatures that looked interesting but were harmless. These humans seemed ideal. "Show me their settlements," Dex ordered. The screen changed to show cities and towns across the planet. Dex watched as the humans went about their daily lives. They walked in groups, gathered in large buildings, and worked together on various tasks. They seemed peaceful enough, with no signs of advanced weapons or military formations. "They live in family groups," Kron observed. "Males, females, and their young stay together. Very social behavior, which usually makes for good pets." Dex had seen this pattern before on other worlds. Social species adapted well to captivity because they needed companionship. The humans would probably bond with their Vorkani owners quickly. "Any signs of aggression?" the captain asked. "Some minor conflicts in certain regions, but nothing serious. They use primitive weapons like metal projectiles and explosive devices. Their technology is at least 500 years behind ours. They pose no threat." The captain made his decision. "Prepare the collection teams. We'll take samples from different regions to get a good variety." The pet dealers like diversity in their stock. Over the next 3 days, Vorkani collection. Ships landed at various locations across Earth. They chose remote areas where humans lived in smaller groups. It's making the operations easier and less noticeable. The collection teams used stun weapons that left the humans unconscious but unharmed. Dr. Elena Brooks was working late in her research lab when the Vorkani found her. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied life forms from other worlds, though she had never expected to meet actual aliens. The irony was not lost on her as she fell unconscious from the stun blast. When she woke up, Elena found herself in a strange room with metallic walls and a soft glowing light from the ceiling. The air smelled different, cleaner but with an odd chemical taste. She was lying on what appeared to be a comfortable bed, though it was clearly not made for humans. Around her, she could see other humans waking up as well. There were men, women, and even some children, all looking confused and frightened. The room was large enough to hold about 50 people, with basic facilities for food and sanitation. "Where are we?" asked a man with graying hair. Elena recognized him as someone who might be military from his posture and the way he quickly assessed their surroundings. "I think we've been abducted," Elena replied quietly. She had studied enough science fiction to recognize the signs, though experiencing it in reality was completely different. A woman holding a young boy spoke up. "My son and I were camping when we saw bright lights. Then everything went dark." Similar stories emerged from the other humans. They had all been taken from different places, but the pattern was the same. Strange lights, then unconsciousness, then waking up here. The metallic walls suddenly became transparent, revealing a corridor beyond. Several tall figures approached, and Elena got her first look at their captors. The Vorkani were impressive beings, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and large eyes that seemed to see everything. Their skin had a grayish color with darker patterns, and they moved with a fluid grace that suggested great strength. Captain Dex entered the holding area with 2 guards. He looked at the humans with the same expression a person might use when examining animals at a market. "Welcome to our ship," he said in surprisingly clear English. "Do not be afraid. You are safe? Why have you taken us?" demanded the military-looking man. Dex tilted his head as if the question amused him. "Shh. You have been selected for a great honor. You will be coming with us to serve the Vorkani Empire." "Serve how?" Alina asked, keeping her voice steady.
Is
"Companions," Dex replied. "Your species shows promise as domestic animals. You will be well cared for in good homes." The humans looked at each other in shock. They were being treated as pets. "We're not animals," the woman with the child said. "We're intelligent beings with our own civilization." Dex's expression remained patient, like someone explaining something simple to a child. "Intelligence is relative. You have some clever behaviors, which makes you more interesting than most pets. But you are clearly not advanced enough to be considered equal to the Vorkani." Alina realized that arguing would be pointless and possibly dangerous. Instead, she began to observe and learn. She watched how the Vorkani moved, how they interacted with each other, and how they operated their technology. If they wanted to treat humans as simple animals, she would let them make that mistake. Over the following days, the Vorkani ship collected more humans from different parts of Earth. Alina estimated that they had taken several hundred people from various countries and backgrounds. The diversity seemed intentional, as if they were collecting different breeds of the same animal. The humans were kept comfortable but confined. They received regular meals of food that was nutritious but bland, and they were allowed to exercise in a larger room under guard. The Vorkani treated them with the same care that humans might show to valuable animals being transported to a new home. Alina used this time to learn as much as possible about their captors. She observed that the Vorkani seemed to consider themselves the dominant species in the galaxy. They spoke casually about other worlds they had conquered and other species they had collected. They showed no sign of viewing any other life form as truly equal to themselves. This arrogance might be their weakness, Alina thought. If the Vorkani truly believed that humans were just clever animals, they would not expect any real resistance or planning from their captives. As the ship traveled through space toward the Vorkani homeworlds, Alina began to form a plan. She would play the role of a docile pet, but she would also learn everything she could about Vorkani society, technology, and military capabilities. The Vorkani had made a mistake in thinking that humans were just another species to be collected and caged. They would learn eventually that some animals are far more dangerous than they appear. 6 months had passed since the humans arrived on Theron Prime, the capital world of the Vorkani Empire. The planet was a marvel of alien architecture, with towering crystal spires and floating platforms connected by streams of energy. The sky had a purple tint, and 2 moons hung visibly in the daytime. Dr. Alina Brooks had been purchased by a wealthy Vorkani merchant named Vor. She lived in a luxurious compound with gardens, artificial streams, and a large transparent dome that showed the alien cityscape beyond. Her living space was designed like a high-end zoo exhibit, comfortable but clearly meant for observation. Vor was proud of his new acquisition. He often brought friends over to show off Elena's abilities. She had learned to perform simple tricks, respond to basic Vorkani commands, and even speak a few words in their language. To the Vorkani, this was impressive intelligence for a pet. "Watch this," Vor would say to his guests, holding up a small device. "Alina, bring me the blue cube." Alina would obediently fetch the requested object, and the Vorkani would marvel at her understanding. They had no idea that she was actually studying their language, their technology, and their social behaviors with the trained eye of a scientist. In another part of the city, General Marcus Kane was experiencing a very different kind of captivity. He had been selected by Admiral Resh, the commander of the Vorkani fleet. Resh had chosen Kane because of his impressive physique and dignified bearing, qualities that the Admiral found appealing in a pet. Kane's quarters were in Resh's military compound, a place filled with star maps, weapon displays, and communication equipment. The general had spent 30 years in Earth's military before his capture, and he recognized opportunity when he saw it. "My human is quite remarkable," Admiral Resh often told his officers. Look how he observes everything with such focus. It's very intelligent for a primitive species. Kane would sit quietly in the corner during military briefings, appearing to be simply watching his owner with loyal devotion. In reality, he was memorizing every detail of Vorkani fleet movements, ship designs, and tactical discussions. His military training allowed him to understand their strategies even without fully grasping their language. Across the Empire, other humans were adapting to their new roles in similar ways. Tom Miller, an engineer from Earth, had been adopted by a Vorkani technology magnate named Hex. Tom's quarters were filled with alien computer systems and manufacturing equipment, which his owner used for his business empire. Hex was delighted by Tom's apparent fascination with technology. Primitive minds are drawn to advanced systems, he explained to his business partners. My human spends hours studying my equipment. Quite amusing, really. Tom would indeed spend hours with the alien technology, but not out of simple curiosity. He was systematically learning how Vorkani computers worked, how their networks connected, and where their security weaknesses might be. His engineering background allowed him to understand the principles behind their advanced systems. In the government district, teacher Anna Walsh lived with a mid-level bureaucrat named Kex. Anna had been chosen for her calm demeanor and intelligent eyes, qualities that Kex found soothing after long days dealing with imperial administration. Having a human is wonderfully relaxing, Kex would tell his colleagues. They are such peaceful creatures. My Anna just sits quietly while I work, occasionally making those pleasant sounds they call speech. Anna had learned to make soft, meaningless sounds that the Vorkani interpreted as contentment. Meanwhile, she was listening to every conversation, reading every document that Kex left visible, gradually building a complete picture of how the Vorkani government operated. The humans quickly discovered that their captors had certain blind spots. The Vorkani viewed them as highly intelligent animals, similar to how humans might view dolphins or elephants. This meant they credited humans with impressive learning abilities, but never suspected deliberate deception or long-term planning. Alina was the first to realize the full potential of their situation. During her daily walks in Vor's garden, she noticed that the compound's communication system was easily accessible. The Vorkani had never considered that their pets might try to contact each other, so they took no precautions against it. Using her knowledge of electronics and the alien systems she had observed, Lena managed to access the local communication network. She sent out a simple signal, hoping other humans might detect it. The response came 3 days later. Tom had detected her transmission while playing with Hex's equipment. To his owner, it looked like innocent curiosity about the blinking lights and sounds. In reality, Tom was establishing the first contact between separated humans. Within weeks, a network began to form. Anna used her access to government communications to relay messages. Kane provided intelligence about military operations. Other humans in different households added their own pieces of information. The Vorkani remained completely unaware of this growing network. They saw their pets becoming more responsive and interactive, which they interpreted as successful domestication. When humans would gather in groups during public exhibitions, their owners were pleased to see them communicating with each other. Look how social they are, the Vorkani would say. They're forming pack bonds, just like we hoped they would. The humans were indeed forming bonds, but not the kind their captors expected. They were sharing information, coordinating observations, and slowly building a comprehensive understanding of Vorkani society. Lena learned that the Vorkani Empire controlled over 300 worlds, with countless enslaved species providing labor and resources. The Empire's strength came from technological superiority and overwhelming military force, but it was spread thin across vast distances. Kane discovered that Vorkani military doctrine was based on dealing with either primitive savages who fought with crude weapons or advanced civilizations that engaged in open warfare. They had no protocols for dealing with covert intelligence operations or coordinated deception. Tom found that Vorkani computer systems were incredibly advanced, but poorly secured against internal threats. The designers had never considered that users might have hidden agendas, or that trusted systems might be compromised from within. Anna learned that the Vorkani government was efficient but inflexible. They had standard procedures for dealing with rebellion and resistance. but these all assumed that enemies would act openly and predictably. As the months passed, the human network grew stronger and more sophisticated. They developed codes, established secure communication channels, and began long-term planning. The Vorkani saw this increased activity as proof that their pets were thriving in captivity. The human domestication program has exceeded all expectations, reported the director of exotic species to the Imperial Council. They are adapting remarkably well to civilized society. Many owners report that their humans seem almost capable of independent thought. The council members laughed at this notion. Independent thought in pets was amusing but hardly threatening. They were already planning to expand the program, collecting more humans from Earth to meet the growing demand. Alina received this news through Anna's access to government communications. Vorkani were planning to return to Earth within the year, seeking to capture thousands more humans for their expanding pet market. This information changed everything. The human network realized they had a limited time to act before their species became completely enslaved. They began to plan something unprecedented in the history of the Vorkani Empire the aliens had made. Their greatest mistake in assuming that intelligence and deception were unrelated abilities. They would soon learn that humans possessed both in dangerous combination. Dr. Alina Brooks had been working on the communication system for weeks. Using parts that she pretended to play with in Vor's workshop, she had built a device that could send encrypted messages across the Vorkani network. Her xenobiology background had taught her to understand complex systems, and the alien technology was becoming clearer to her each day. The breakthrough came when Tom Miller responded to her latest transmission. His engineering skills had allowed him to modify Hex's computer, systems without detection. Together, they established the first secure communication channel between captured humans. Elena, this is Tom, came the message through the hidden network. I've identified 12 other humans in this sector alone. We need to expand contact. Elena smiled as she read the message on her small device. She quickly typed back, confirmed. I have Anna feeding government intelligence and Kane monitoring military operations. How many do you estimate total? Over 2,000 humans scattered across the Empire, Tom replied. Most in major population centers, some in military installations, others in research facilities. The Vorkani distributed us everywhere. This was better than Alina had hoped. 2,000 humans, each positioned in different parts of Vorkani society, represented the most comprehensive intelligence network in galactic history. The aliens had unknowingly placed spies in every important location across their empire. Anna Walsh sent her first major intelligence report that same week. Through her access to government communications in Kex's office, she had discovered the true scope of the Vorkani Empire. The Empire controls 347 worlds. She transmitted to the network. Population estimated at 12 billion Vorkani, plus 200 billion enslaved beings from various species. Military strength includes 15,000 warships divided into regional fleets. General Kane added crucial details about military organization. Fleet command structure is highly centralized. Admiral Raish controls the main battle fleet from Theron. Prime regional commanders report directly to him, but they have limited independent authority. This creates opportunities for coordinated strikes. Alina coordinated the information flow, creating detailed files on every aspect of Vorkani society. The network grew as more humans made contact, each adding pieces to the growing intelligence picture. Dr. Ray Chen, physicist, captured from Earth's Luna colony, had been placed with Vorkani scientists. His reports revealed the Empire's technological capabilities and limitations. Their energy weapons are powerful, but require significant charging time, Ray transmitted. Shield technology is advanced but has specific frequency vulnerabilities. Most importantly, their computer systems use centralized processing nodes that could be targeted. Lisa Park, a former diplomat, had been adopted by a Vorkani cultural minister. Her position gave her access to information about the Empire's subject. Species. There are over 50 enslaved civilizations, Lisa reported. Most were conquered through overwhelming force, then kept compliant through technological dependence. However, Several species have attempted rebellions in the past 20 years. The Vorkani are concerned about growing unrest. This information was particularly valuable. Alina realized that humans were not the only ones suffering under Vorkani rule. A coordinated uprising could potentially free multiple species at once. Jake Rodriguez, a former Special Forces operator, had been placed with a Vorkani security chief. His reports provided crucial details about the Empire's internal defenses. Security focuses on external threats and primitive rebellions, Jake transmitted. They have no protocols for sophisticated infiltration or coordinated deception. Their monitoring systems assume all threats will be obvious and aggressive. The network continued to expand. Humans in commercial centers reported on economic systems. Those in transportation hubs mapped supply lines and communication routes. Others in educational institutions learned about Vorkani history and psychology. Alina discovered that the Vorkani had a fundamental blind spot in their thinking. Their entire civilization was built around the concept of technological superiority. They believed that any species advanced enough to threaten them would also be advanced enough to challenge them openly. They cannot conceive of a technologically inferior species using sophisticated tactics, Alina explained in a message to the network. To them, intelligence and technology always advance together. They think primitive means stupid. Tom had been making remarkable progress with the computer systems. Hex often praised his pet's apparent fascination with technology, never suspecting that Tom was actually mapping the entire Vorkani data network. I've identified critical infrastructure nodes, Tom reported. Power distribution, communication relays, transportation control, and military command systems all route through central processors. A coordinated attack on these nodes could paralyze major systems across multiple worlds. The humans began planning with a level of coordination that would have impressed military strategists across the galaxy. They divided responsibilities based on their positions and capabilities. Alina would coordinate overall strategy and maintain network security. Her scientific background made her ideal for analyzing Vorkani weaknesses and developing countermeasures. Tom would prepare cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. His access to advanced computer systems gave him the tools needed to create devastating software weapons. Kane would provide military intelligence and tactical planning. His position with Admiral Resch gave him access to fleet movements and strategic planning. Anna would monitor government responses and provide political intelligence. Her access to bureaucratic communications was essential for timing their operations. The network established protocols for secure communication, emergency procedures, and coordinated action. They created backup systems, alternative communication channels, and contingency plans for various scenarios. Most importantly, they began to contact other enslaved species. Using the Vorkani communication networks, humans reached out to representatives of other conquered civilizations. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Species that had been enslaved for decades suddenly found themselves in contact with a group that offered hope for freedom. Corbin Resistance sends greetings, came one message. We have been planning rebellion for 30 years but lacked coordination. Your network changes everything. Similar messages arrived from the Altai, traders, the Nexus Collective, and dozens of other species. Each group brought unique capabilities and local knowledge to the growing alliance. Lena realized that the Vorkani had created the perfect conditions for their own downfall by spreading humans throughout their empire and connecting all worlds. Through their communication networks, they had enabled the formation of the most effective resistance organization in galactic history. The network now included not just humans but representatives from every major enslaved species in the empire. They had detailed intelligence on Vorkani military capabilities, economic systems, political structures, and technological weaknesses. More importantly, they had identified the perfect opportunity to strike. Admiral Resch was planning a major campaign against the Alterian Federation, the only remaining free civilization in the region. This would require the deployment of most of the Vorkani fleet, leaving their core worlds lightly defended. The campaign begins in 3 months, Kane reported from his position in Resch's headquarters. 60% of the fleet will be committed to the operation. This is our chance. Lena coordinated the final planning phase. A network would need to strike simultaneously across hundreds of worlds, disabling Vorkani defenses while coordinating the liberation of enslaved populations. The humans had spent almost a year appearing to be simple, harmless pets. During that time, they had built the most sophisticated intelligence and resistance network the galaxy had ever seen. The Vorkani continued to believe that their human pets were simply becoming more social and interactive. They had no idea that their empire was about to face its greatest challenge from the species they had dismissed as primitive animals. The message came through General Kane's position in Admiral Reishi's headquarters. The Vorkani fleet was preparing for their largest military operation in 50 years. Their target was the Alterian Federation, the last free civilization that posed any threat to the Empire. Operation Final Victory begins in 2 weeks, Kane transmitted to the human network. Admiral Reish will command personally. 70% of the main fleet will participate, including most of their heavy battleships. Alina received the message in Vor's compound while pretending to play with her favorite toy, a small communication device that her owner thought was broken. The timing was perfect. The Vorkani were about to leave their core worlds more vulnerable than they had been in decades. "This is our moment," she sent back to the network. "Prepare all systems for coordinated activation." Across the Empire, humans began their final preparations. Tom Miller had spent months building hidden programs in Hex's computer systems. His owner continued to praise his pet's curiosity about technology, never realizing that Tom had created the most sophisticated cyber weapons the galaxy had ever seen. "Virus packages are ready," Tom reported. "I can disable power grids, communication networks, and transportation systems across 47 worlds simultaneously. The programs will activate on your signal." Anna Walsh had been carefully documenting government procedures and emergency protocols through her access to Kex's office. She had identified the exact sequence of events that would occur when the uprising began. "Government response will be predictable," Anna transmitted. "They have standard procedures for dealing with primitive rebellions. It will take them at least 6 hours to realize this is something completely different." Dr. Ray Chen, working with the Vorkani scientists, had discovered critical information about their defensive systems. His reports revealed weaknesses that could be exploited during the uprising. "Shield generators have a 30-second reset cycle," Ray reported. "During that window, they're completely vulnerable. I've identified the exact timing for each major installation." The network had grown beyond just humans. Representatives from enslaved species across the Empire were now part of the coordination. Each group had been preparing for their role in the liberation. The Altai traders, who had been forced to transport goods throughout the Empire, were ready to disable their ships and strand Vorkani forces on distant worlds. The Corbin resistance had prepared weapons hidden in mining equipment. The Nexus Collective had identified ways to turn the Vorkani's own automated systems against them. Alina coordinated the final briefing through the secure network. Over 2,000 humans and representatives from 50 enslaved species received their instructions simultaneously. "Remember," Alina transmitted, "we must appear completely normal until the exact moment of activation. The Vorkani still believe we are simple pets and primitive slaves. That belief is our greatest weapon." Admiral Reish was busy with final preparations. For the Alterian campaign, he often worked late in his command center, with Kane sitting quietly nearby. The general appeared to be simply resting, but he was actually memorizing every detail of the Vorkani fleet deployment. "My human is such good company during these long planning sessions," Reish commented to his staff. "Very calming presence. I think he enjoys watching the tactical displays." Kane did indeed find the displays interesting, but not for the reasons the Admiral imagined. He was noting the exact positions of every Vorkani ship, the timing of their departure schedule, and the communication codes they would use during the campaign. 2 days before the fleet's departure, strange things began to happen across the Empire. Minor technical failures occurred in seemingly random locations. Communication systems experienced brief interruptions. Transportation networks had temporary delays. The Vorkani attributed these problems to normal system maintenance issues. Their technology was so advanced that minor glitches were considered routine. They had no idea that Tom's preliminary programs were already beginning to map their networks and identify vulnerabilities. Excellent work, Alina transmitted to Tom. The Vorkani are ignoring the early warning signs completely. Vor had been particularly pleased with Elena's behavior recently. She seemed more attentive and responsive, often watching his activities with what appeared to be devoted interest. My human has become wonderfully attached to me, Vor told his friend. She follows my every move with such focus. It's quite flattering, really. Lena was indeed watching Vor's activities closely. She was studying his daily routine to identify the best moment to disable his security systems and take control of his communication equipment. The day of departure arrived. Across the Empire, Vorkani citizens gathered to watch their mighty fleet depart for the campaign against the Altarians. It was a spectacular sight as thousands of warships lifted from their bases and formed massive formations in space. Admiral Raish stood on his flagship's bridge, with Kane positioned nearby as always. The Admiral was in excellent spirits, confident that this campaign would finally eliminate the last threat to Vorkani supremacy. After today, the galaxy will truly belong to the Empire, Resh declared to his officers. The Altarians have fought well, but they cannot match our superior technology and numbers. Kane listened to these words while mentally reviewing the final details of the human network's plan. In just a few hours, the Admiral would discover that technology and numbers meant nothing when faced with an enemy that had been underestimated. For over a year, as the fleet departed, Alina sent the final preparatory message to all network members. Phase 1 begins now. Maintain normal behavior until the activation signal. The timing had to be perfect. The fleet needed to be far enough from their home worlds that they could not return quickly, but not so far that they could establish new communication with their bases. Alina had calculated the exact window when the Vorkani would be most vulnerable. Tom began activating his hidden programs in computer systems across the Empire. To his owner Hex, it looked like his pet was simply playing with the equipment as usual. In reality, Tom was launching the most comprehensive cyber attack in galactic history. Systems are responding perfectly, Tom transmitted. All virus packages are in position and ready for simultaneous activation. Anna monitored government communications from Kex's office. The bureaucrats were focused on managing the logistics of the military campaign, completely unaware that their entire administrative system was about to be compromised. Government networks are completely unprotected, Anna reported. They have no defensive protocols against internal attacks. The enslaved species were also ready. Years of forced labor had given them detailed knowledge of Vorkani infrastructure. They knew exactly which systems to target for maximum effect. Alina waited until the precise moment when the fleet reached the optimal distance from their home worlds. The Admiral's ships were committed to their course toward Altarian space, but they had not yet engaged the enemy. She activated her communication device and sent the signal that would change the galaxy forever. All units. This is Alina. Operation Liberation begins now. Across hundreds of worlds, the greatest coordinated uprising in galactic history began. Simultaneously, the Vorkani Empire was about to discover that their simple pets had been planning their downfall for months. The moment Elena's signal went out across the galaxy, everything changed. Tom Miller's virus programs activated simultaneously on hundreds of worlds. Power grids failed, communication networks crashed, and transportation systems stopped working. In Hex's compound, the alien watched in horror as his advanced computer systems began displaying error messages in languages he had never seen before. "What is happening?" Hex demanded, staring at his screens. "The entire network is failing." Tom stood up from his usual position on the floor. For the first time in over a year, he looked directly at his former owner with the eyes of an equal, not a pet. "The network isn't failing," Tom said in perfect Vorkani. "It's being liberated." Across the Empire, similar scenes played out as humans revealed their true nature. Alina had taken control of Vor's communication center within minutes of the signal. Her xenobiology training and months of observation had taught her exactly how to operate every system in the compound. "Impossible," Vor gasped as Alina activated the main communication array. "We're just an animal. Cannot understand our technology." "Your mistake was thinking that understanding requires permission," Elena replied, broadcasting her message to every world in the Empire. People of the galaxy, this is Dr. Elena Brooks, representing the human resistance and our allied species. Today, we take back our freedom. The message reached every planet simultaneously. For the first time in the Empire's history, enslaved populations heard the voice of organized Tarian speaking directly to them through the Vorkani's own communication networks. Anna Walsh had taken control of the government building where Kex worked. Her knowledge of bureaucratic procedures allowed her to lock down the entire administrative system, emergency protocols that were designed to respond to. Primitive uprisings became useless when the rebels controlled the very systems meant to stop them. This cannot be happening, Kex said, watching as his security clearances were revoked by his own pet. You were supposed to be domesticated. We were never domestic, Anna replied, accessing classified files that revealed the locations of every enslaved population in the Empire. We were always planning. The Altai traders disabled their cargo ships exactly as planned, stranding Vorkani garrison forces on remote worlds. The Corbin resistance emerged from the mines with weapons they had been building from industrial equipment. The Nexus Collective turned the automated defense systems against their creators. Within hours, the organized structure of the Vorkani Empire began to collapse. The humans had not just planned their own escape. They had coordinated the liberation of every enslaved species across hundreds of worlds. Dr. Ray Chen used his access to the scientific facilities to broadcast technical information to all the resistance groups. Shield frequencies, weapon specifications, and defensive protocols were shared freely among species that had been kept ignorant of such knowledge for generations. The Vorkani's greatest strength was keeping us isolated, Ray transmitted. We share everything they tried to hide from us. Admiral Resh received the first reports of the uprising while his fleet was deep in space, approaching Alterian territory. The messages came in fragments as communication systems failed across the Empire. Sir, we're getting reports of system failures on Theron Prime, his communications officer reported. Multiple worlds are experiencing coordinated technical problems. Kane stood up from his position near the Admiral's command chair. The general's military bearing was now fully visible as he dropped the pretense of being a harmless pet. Those aren't technical problems, Kane said, causing every Vorkani on the bridge to turn and stare at him in shock. That's a coordinated military operation. Raish backed away from Kane in disbelief. You spoke. You understand everything we've been saying. I've understood every word for the past year, Kane replied calmly. I've been listening to your tactical discussions, memorizing your fleet positions, and learning your defensive strategies. Did you really think a species advanced enough to develop space travel would be primitive enough to make good pets? The Admiral's shock turned to rage. Seize him. He's been spying on us. But Kane was no longer alone. Across the fleet, humans, who had been placed on various ships as decorative pets, were simultaneously revealing themselves as trained intelligence operatives. The Vorkani had unknowingly brought enemy agents aboard their most secure military vessels. The uprising spread faster than the Vorkani could respond. Their protocols for dealing with rebellion assumed that enemies would be obvious and primitive. They had no procedures for handling sophisticated coordination or technological sabotage from within their own systems. Elena's broadcast continued to reach populations across the galaxy. The message was simple but devastating. The mighty Vorkani Empire had been brought down by the species they had dismissed as harmless animals. Over 1,000 years, the Vorkani have conquered worlds by assuming that technological superiority meant automatic victory, Elena announced. They never considered that intelligence comes in many forms, and that underestimating your enemy is the greatest mistake any civilization can make. The response from enslaved species was immediate and overwhelming. Populations that had been oppressed for decades suddenly found themselves with the knowledge and coordination needed to fight back effectively. Jake Rodriguez led the takeover of the security headquarters on Theron Prime. His special forces training and year of observation had given him detailed knowledge of every defensive system. Within hours, the capital world's defenses were under resistance control. The Vorkani trained us to be invisible, Jake transmitted to the network. They never realized that invisible enemies are the most dangerous kind. Admiral Resh tried desperately to contact his fleet command, but the communication networks were completely compromised. His ships were isolated in space, unable to coordinate their response or even confirm what was happening in their home territories. "How is this possible?" Resh demanded of Kane. "Your species was primitive when we found you. You had no advanced technology, no unified government, no space fleet." Kane smiled grimly. "You're right. We didn't have advanced technology. But we had something you never expected: the ability to learn, adapt, and plan while appearing completely harmless. You gave us access to your entire civilization, then ignored us because you thought we were too stupid to be dangerous." The truth was spreading across the galaxy through the Resistance broadcasts. The Vorkani Empire had not been defeated by superior technology or overwhelming force. They had been brought down by their own arrogance and their failure to recognize the intelligence of the species they had enslaved. Lisa Park coordinated with representatives from dozens of liberated species, establishing the framework for a new galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination. The knowledge shared through the human network became the foundation for a free alliance of worlds. "This is what happens," Alina concluded in her final broadcast to the galaxy. "When you mistake patience for stupidity, cooperation for weakness, and the appearance of submission for the reality of defeat. The Vorkani Empire has fallen not because we were stronger, but because they never bothered to truly understand who we really were." The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo through history: never underestimate a species based on surface appearances, especially one that is mastered the most dangerous art of all, appearing harmless while planning your downfall.